and welcome everyone. My name is Samir Kadu, Partner Solutions Architect at AWS, dedicated to the partnership. Is Eric from RoundTower. Eric, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Samir, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join today's webinar. My name is Eric Sanalisis, and I'm a consulting systems engineer in the Cloud and DevOps practice here at RoundTower. Today, we'll be talking about accelerating your deployment of VMware Cloud on AWS with RoundTower. Next slide, please. RoundTower is currently transforming IT by leveraging modernizing IT service delivery with technologies like software-defined data centers, continuous integration, continuous delivery, cloud and analytics. Leveraging automation, RoundTower is transforming IT operations into a service broker. No transformation is complete unless we address process and culture. In the end, IT's goal is to service the business and to enable the business to be competitive in the market. As many of you may have already experienced, we are heading into a multi-cloud world. According to IDC, 80% of organizations have a hybrid cloud strategy today. And we are finding that this is holding true across our customer base as well. So what's driving this need for change? Cloud is not just IaaS, infrastructure as a service, but it's software as a service and platform as a service. Many organizations suffer from long lead times for traditional IT infrastructure, with the cycle of ordering, receiving, deploying, provisioning, retiring, and replacing life cycle. Data center operations also is no longer a competitive advantage for many businesses. So why hybrid cloud? Hybrid cloud is attractive to so many businesses because transforming your business 100% to Amazon native services could be time-consuming and costly, and may require a different skill set than what organizations currently have today. The business needs to understand the impact of moving from OpEx to CapEx financial models, as well as cloud transformation will require changes in your service management and service delivery portfolios. You have to adapt for new governance policies and changes in the way the network and security is delivered within the cloud. Therefore, a hybrid approach makes the most sense for many organizations. RoundTower's hybrid cloud strategy is helping customers with all aspects of their IT transformation. RoundTower takes a unique approach by leveraging cloud readiness assessments, looking at your traditional IT infrastructure and your IT service delivery models, and then bringing recommendations to transform and adapt these processes and procedures to the new technologies that you're going to be adopting in your organization. We see a lot of our customers leveraging VMware Cloud on AWS for services like disaster recovery as a service or backup as a service and cloud archiving. We also see a variety of our customers leveraging software-defined data centers in their existing on-premise infrastructure to transform away from those traditional three-tier architectures and adopt a more cloud-like operating model on-prem. So as we look at some of the building challenges that our customers are facing when adopting cloud, they're looking at things like operational consistency. How do these new cloud models or these cloud technologies change the way that I operate my infrastructure? Do I have the correct skill set and tools to be able to manage and control my environment as we move to cloud? Things like change control, governance, risk, and compliance and security also come into question as we start looking at and adopting these cloud technologies. And then lastly, the things that the business is most interested in is, will my SLAs still remain, or are my SLAs going to get better as we move to the cloud and adopt these new technologies? So the offering that RoundTower, VMware, and AWS have come up with is a unique solution that allows you to accelerate the adoption of technology and adoption of the cloud, and eliminates many of the hurdles that many of the IT organizations have to overcome when adopting public cloud. So with this, we're going to start with the Amazon Global Infrastructure. We start with dedicated hardware provisioned on demand for you in your cluster. And then on top of that, we leverage the software-defined data center, cloud formations on AWS hardware. This leverages technologies that you already know, your team is already familiar with, and allows you to quickly adopt the cloud without having to learn new skills and technologies. On-premise, you have technologies like vSphere. You may have vSAN for your storage and NSX for your networking. But if you don't, that's not a problem, because when you deploy your VMware Cloud on AWS, these technologies come with the solution and allow you to connect and integrate your on-prem vCenter in your data center with the vCenter in the cloud. Now, with that, you can also bring your entire ecosystem of your vRealize suite, your vSphere integrated containers, and the rest of the VMware vSphere ecosystem. Now, because we are running on Amazon's global infrastructure, we can extend that beyond our VMware Cloud on AWS and start consuming many of the Amazon native services. These services are available to us through a high-speed, low-latency connection between the VMware Cloud on AWS infrastructure and the native Amazon services. So our workloads with VMware Cloud on AWS allow us to maintain and expand our private cloud or our infrastructure that we have on-prem into the public cloud. Another use case that we can leverage is the consolidation or migration. A number of our clients have come to us talking about mergers and acquisitions and wanting to fold in or bring in these M&As into the existing infrastructure. VMware Cloud on AWS is a great target for doing these migrations. And then the last scenario that we see a lot of our companies asking us for help with is around workload flexibility. Many of our organizations have burstable workloads in their VMware infrastructure, and they don't have enough, they have contention within that infrastructure where they need to be able to burst these workloads and move them rapidly into another environment. And VMware Cloud on AWS works well across all of these scenarios. Next slide, please. With VMware Cloud on AWS, we also have the ability to create multiple software-defined data centers and multi-cluster architectures. And as you can see in this picture, we are depicting a 2-cluster VMware Cloud on AWS nodes with 8 nodes, 4 nodes in each cluster. Can we go back one slide? So because we are running vSphere in the cloud and we are running on Amazon's native hardware, we want to ensure that we are protected and that your services and your platform is always available. And so to do this, DRS is enabled by default. And over on the right-hand side, we have some specifications around these DRS settings that are enabled. But just one thing to mention is that we do support host affinity rules now with the latest release of this solution. And from a delivery perspective, the items outlined in blue here are managed by VMware, meaning that the management cluster, the HCX, and the physical infrastructure beneath, the Amazon infrastructure beneath, those components are managed by VMware. The green layer here is the RoundTower managed services, And then the virtual machines are things that you would administer or manage within your environment. RoundTower Managed Services can also assist you in managing that virtualized workload within the cloud. So because this is a cloud service, cluster expansion and contraction is available so that we can rapidly expand or shrink our cluster. This flexibility gives us the ability, or this interface gives us the ability to rapidly provision additional hosts within our cluster. But on the same token, we can also use APIs or Power CLI to actually drive changes within the environment. So if you have a dynamic workload or a burstable workload, you can scale your cluster on demand. So what happens when we click the Add Host button? In our previous slide, we were showing you that we had 6 nodes provisioned in our cluster, and we added 2 additional nodes. When we do this, CloudFormation kicks in and starts the automation process of identifying 2 new bare metal nodes within Amazon's infrastructure, assigns them to our cluster, and then begins the process of provisioning all of the networking resources that are required for these nodes to join the cluster. CloudFormation will also join the nodes to the cluster, and as soon as all the networking services are available, then vSAN will automatically kick in and begin to increase the storage capacity of those new nodes that were added to the cluster. All of this is done as a managed service. All of this is done via automation and orchestration by simply clicking that button when we added 2 new nodes. So what happens when we have a hardware failure? RoundTower Managed Services is constantly monitoring your environment. And if we detect a problem within the environment, we will automatically identify that problem node in the cluster, add a new node to your cluster, and allow that same process that we just described of the networking provisioning and the vSAN provisioning to occur. Allow that node to become fully functional and available, migrate your workloads to this new node, and then evict the damaged node or the problem node from your cluster. All of this happens seamlessly and in the background with no interruption to you or your services. VMware Cloud on AWS is now also available in multiple availability zones. And this allows us to have a stretched cluster between these availability zones. This gives us the opportunity to be able to create an environment that's highly resilient and highly reliable, and to be able to split our workloads or migrate our workloads between these different availability zones. With HA cluster configuration, again, because this is a managed service in the cloud, there are some certain parameters that we are putting around the availability for this cluster. As I mentioned before, host failure remediation is the responsible of RoundTower and VMware. There's no work that you need to do as a customer of this service to be able to ensure that your platform is consistently available. But because of this, we are taking some precautions and we are setting some high availability settings within VMware, which may impact your consolidation ratio. And so I have a list of things here that you may want to consider when architecting and designing your environment. But all of this is meant to protect your applications and to protect your environment and offer the highest level of service availability. As I mentioned earlier, when we deploy our software-defined data center, we get some standard constructs with this, such as vSAN and NSX. But because we're in the Amazon data center, we have the opportunity to start consuming a lot of the Amazon services with a high-speed, low-latency connection. The way that this is achieved is by deploying elastic network interfaces between the Amazon environment and your software-defined data center, your VMware data center. These interfaces will become available inside of the NSX manager, and you can set firewall rules and firewall policies on these elastic network interfaces within your software-defined data center and also within your VPC. In this picture, what we're depicting here is an application server running inside of the software-defined data center which needs to communicate with Amazon's S3 simple storage service, as well as Amazon EC2 instances. And you can see how we have optimized the traffic flow between these two different environments. And this also gives us the ability to transfer data at zero cost between these different VPCs. This pricing model is different than the pricing model that you would have if you were to run the SDDC in your own data center and use services on Amazon S3 and EC2. So VMWorld 2018 had some recent announcements. This solution offering is updated and is patched automatically for you and is constantly updated approximately every 90 days. This release cycle is a different release model. Because this is a managed service and it's hosted in the cloud, it's a different release cycle than what you currently have on-prem today. And so at VMworld 2018, VMware announced that the VMware Cloud on AWS is available in Asia Pacific. So if you have data sovereignty or compliance requirements, that means that you have to have a cluster deployed in the Asia Pacific region, you can now do that today. Also announced in preview are the R5 instances. These R5 bare metal instances from Amazon contain larger CPUs and additional memory per node. But these servers also give us the ability to leverage a vSAN backed by elastic block storage within Amazon or Amazon's EBS service. As I mentioned, this is in preview and should be going general availability in early next year. Also at VMworld, there was a new announcement with a reduction of 50%, as much as 50%, to the entry-level cluster size. And there were also enhancements made to the hybrid cloud extension. Just last week, we had reInvent 2018. reInvent is Amazon's annual conference. And at reInvent 2018, Amazon announced that there is a new technology called Outpost. And what Outpost will allow us to do is to bring Amazon's hardware inside of your data center and allow you to deploy this software-defined data center, VMware Cloud on AWS, within your own environment using Amazon's hardware. This new methodology for deployment gives us a unified interface of management, gives us resiliency to transient networks failures, allows us to integrate on-premise AWS services. It's consistent and familiar VMware software-defined data center, which I've been mentioning throughout this presentation, and it gives you native integration of these technologies on-prem. So how do we get started with VMware Cloud on AWS? Well, let's start out with the account structure. Today, if we were to get started with VMware Cloud on AWS, we'll need to work with VMware and procure a VMware Cloud VPC account. We'll also need to work with Amazon as we deploy this environment and deploy an Amazon customer VPC account. RoundTower service brings both of these two contractual obligations together and provides you with a single invoice for all of your cloud accounts. So it's a single point of contact for all of your services across the two providers. An added benefit of leveraging RoundTower's managed service for VMware Cloud on AWS is our cloud cost consumption optimization service. This is a managed service by RoundTower, which leverages technologies and tools that allow you to constantly optimize your environment, whether it's by performance or for cost optimization, or just for automation and orchestration within your environment. We can help you manage those costs and manage those services with this cloud cost optimization that's included. And so I wanted to talk about a case study where this solution was leveraged for a mortgage company in migrating them to the cloud, in their cloud migration. This mortgage company had a compelling event. They had a data center that was, it was a disaster recovery data center that had a lease ending and had an equipment refresh cycle that was coming up. Working with this customer, RoundTower proposed a combination of leveraging the VMware Cloud on AWS, as well as native AWS services, and refactoring a lot of their legacy technology and moving their 350 applications to the cloud. The customer had a very short time frame in order to execute this migration. And so these two technologies gave us all of the tools that we need to be able to design and implement this managed service by RoundTower. And so what did that look like as we moved into the deployment of the environment? They had a corporate office, which had a VMware infrastructure. Leveraging HCX gave us a layer 2 extension so that we could maintain IP connectivity between the corporate office and the software-defined data center. We also leveraged Direct Connect and a peering point, which was very close to the customer's office, to connect into the Amazon infrastructure. What we were able to do is to build the software-defined data center for them, migrate all of their applications from their corporate office into the software-defined data center, and then refactor many of the technologies that they had and started adopting technologies like Amazon RDS, Amazon S3, EC2 instances for their load balance for their web servers, Amazon Elastic Load Balancers, and Amazon Web Application Firewalls. Other tools that we used during the migration, we refactored the way that they do backup and disaster recovery. And to do that, we leveraged Veeam. We used S3 storage gateway with replication between regions. And we also leveraged EC2 and Direct Connect, as I mentioned before. The co-location, the customer, while we were going through this migration strategy for their disaster recovery data center, also told us that they wanted to completely eliminate their primary data center. And so we began the migration of some of those core critical services that they had on-prem into a co-location facility at Light Tower in Pennsylvania. How did we handle their backup and recovery for disaster recovery and business continuity? We started out with their primary cluster being in VMware Cloud on AWS in US East 1. Leveraging Amazon services, we deployed the backup server, the storage gateway, and we leveraged Amazon S3 for the backend. We used Amazon's global infrastructure to replicate these backups from the East Coast to US West 2 in the West Coast. And there we had a backup server and another storage gateway. And with automation and orchestration, in the event of a disaster or a business continuity event, we can automate and stand up the virtual, the VMware Cloud on AWS cluster in US West 2 and begin the restoration of their systems into that cluster. We also leveraged Amazon Glacier in US West 2 to provide off-site and long-term retention of their backups to meet their RTOs and RPOs. So as you get ready for your hybrid cloud journey, I recommend that you understand how VMware Cloud on AWS will fit into your cloud strategy. Have a conversation with your RoundTower account team and your VMware Cloud team about AWS and VMware Cloud on AWS, and then get your environment ready to maximize the benefits of VMware Cloud on AWS. For more information, you can follow RoundTower on Twitter at RoundTowerTech, and also visit us on the web at goroundtower.com/VMware Cloud on AWS. Now I'd like to open it up for questions. I don't see any questions coming in the chat at this time. I'd like to thank you once again for attending our webinar today. Thank you and have a great day.